What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It's your boy Goblin, and today we're coming in with a banger of a video, a true hoot and a holler. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Drop a like if you do. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and also head over to goblin420.com today and use code GOBLIN at checkout to get 20% off your order. We're bringing this sale back. Listen, we've got some old stuff that we're going to be taking off the store fairly soon to make way for the new drop that's coming up. Look at these designs, man. Look at this beautiful shirt right here that's coming soon. Now, I'm not going to show you all of them. I might not even show you more than one of these upcoming designs, but just know banger designs are coming soon. So head over to goblin420.com, use code GOBLIN at checkout, and you can get 20% off your order of any size. Help me get rid of the old stock, baby. Hope you guys enjoy. Without further ado, let's dive right into the video. Now, today's video is something that I actually discussed recently on one of my podcast episodes on Pine Park, which you guys can go watch now. And in that episode, I had brought up the oldest weed that I'd ever smoked. Eric had asked me about it, and it reminded me of this fun day that I figured was video worthy. You see, this took place back in my high school days. Now, when exactly, I don't really remember, honestly, so we're kind of going to have to guesstimate here. But it was before I went to my alternative school, which was halfway through my junior year, but after my sophomore year, I know that much, because I didn't start hanging out with this chick until around that time. So I guesstimate that this was late 2015. Maybe mid-2015, but either way, at this point in my life, you guys know me, I was smoking, I was popping my Xans here and there, kinda up to no good. And I have a friend who in this video we're gonna call Mary. Now, Mary's a girl who's been in some of my prior videos, but she wasn't really a significant enough character for many of you guys to remember. In fact, I don't even remember what name I assigned her, which usually I remember the important ones. So we're just gonna refer to her as Mary. Now, Mary's a girl that I was friends with in high school. We would hang out, we would smoke a lot. She was one of those kind of artsy, like hippie girls, you know? But we got along well, A, because she was always mobile. She was always down to come pick you up or something like that. And B, she had money to throw, all right? That was a rare trait to find, especially in the girls back in high school. No, the horny dudes were smoking them out, all right? Not anymore. This chick was down to throw. So I was always down to link up and smoke with her, right? So in this particular day, Mary and I were talking, and we had already planned to meet up later and smoke. We were gonna go grab some food, link up with some of my other homies, you know, chill out a little bit. So I hop in my car and I go over to Mary's house, and we already got our plan in motion. We were gonna go stop over at Cody's, pick up a little bit of weed. Everything was going good. Now, as I'm on my way to Mary's, I pull up to her crib and I text her that I'm outside, and it's the same thing every time. She comes running out of her garage, same exact routine. This time, things were a little different. You see, this time, she came running out and she was hype. She had a little pep in her step. She's like, yo, Nick, I found some weed. And I'm like, yo, that's very exciting. Like, what do you mean you found some weed? So she hops in the car and she brought it with her. She's like, look at this shit. We're just parked up in front of her house. And she busts out this bag that had a large quantity of weed. I was expecting she found like maybe an eighth she forgot about. Bro, I don't know how much it was, but this must have been minimum a quarter pound. Like, this was a fat bag, dude. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, where did you find this QP? Like, what? Like, how did you just discover this sitting at the crib? You know, mind you, Mary was a pretty well-off white girl in the suburbs, you know, very nice house in a little like semi-private neighborhood. You know, they even had a little creek behind her house, private water access. That takes money to get, okay? So it's not like she was living in the trap. Like, look, oh, I found this QP that the plug left behind, you know? No. That was not the case here. So finding a QP at this girl's house was pretty much the equivalent of finding a kilo of meth at Kim K's house, which probably wouldn't be that common. Coke might be more likely, though. So she hands me this bag and I'm looking at it and I realize pretty quickly that this is dirt. This is like genuine. Listen, I don't know how old this weed was. She didn't know either. She didn't even know this weed existed, right? But this marijuana was quite literally the worst kush I've ever touched. It was probably pretty decent back in its day, you know, before 9/11 happened, but at this point, it was awful, right? I put my hand in the bag and I remember I pulled out a nug, and I use the term nug very loosely here. The nugs were hanging together by a thread, dude. I pull out one of these quote-unquote nugs, right? And the sugar leaves just disintegrate like ash, dude. There is absolutely no scent besides a slight, like, dust smell, if that even makes sense. It smelled like when you open your vacuum up to clean it out. This was not appealing, right? But you have to remember that we were in high school at this point. So I'm telling you right now, anything with THC content had us hype. You could have handed me a piece of dog shit on a platter, and if it had 5% THC, I would have been lit. So I hand the bag back to her and I just pull off. I dip immediately. I didn't even know where I was going. My heart was racing. I'm sitting there and I'm like, bro, this is the come up, dude. Like, we could sell this garbage weed. Like, this is the come up, dude. This is the lick. So she's sitting there and she's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you want to do with it? And I tell her, I'm like, we should try smoking it, you know? So we immediately go to the gas station. There's a lot of gas stations in my area that did not ID whatsoever. You just had to know the layout. So we went to the good old BP. There was a certain BP that we always went to because they wouldn't card. There was a mobile you could try, but it depended on who was working. But the BP you could always rely on because it was owned by some very sketchy Armenian men. I'm 99% sure they were Armenian. Black Mercedes, slick back hair, leather black fits. You know, like, you can tell when someone's Eastern European, you know what I'm saying? Especially here in Chicago. But we would always go to that gas station because it became very clear that they probably weren't paying taxes and didn't care how old we were. So we pull up over there, we grab some wraps, and we decide that we're going to try rolling a blunt of this weed. So I'm asking her a little more about it, and I'm like, well, where did you, like, how did you find this? How did you just discover this? And she was like, oh, like, I was helping my dad, like, clean the garage, you know? He asked me to clean it, and I found this bag in our garage. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, bro, what, like, why does your dad have this ancient ass weed? So I asked her, I'm like, well, does your dad smoke? Like, is he going to know this is missing? And she's like, no, like, I don't think so. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, bro, if she doesn't even know her dad smokes, this weed has to be bare minimum older than her. Like, this has to be some ancient pack, you know? I didn't know how long Mary had been living at this house with her family, or, you know, if they owned the place. I don't know what they had to own the place. They had hella paper, but I don't know how long they had owned it, right? All I knew was that this weed was 100% older than my Call of Duty career, okay? This weed was older than me, okay? This weed potentially may have seen Martin Luther King speak. I mean, ancient marijuana, right? So she has no clue how old this weed is. She doesn't know anything about it. And I'm sitting there and, you know, looking at it, like, you can tell it's weed, right? I mean, weed has a very distinct look. There is no other plant or flower or thing you can put in a bag that quite looks like a nug of weed. No matter how old it gets, it looks, you know, it just looks like weed. But this shit had lost everything that looked good about it. I mean, I'm going to try my best to describe this bag. Dark green, right? Like the life had been sucked out of it. Borderline brown, you know? Like, it was just, there was almost no color left. Looking at this bag made me feel colorblind, you know what I'm saying? Like, just absolutely out of control, terrible on the looks. The smell we already talked about earlier, there's pretty much no smell to it, but the touch was the most interesting part. Because as it came time for us to roll the blunts, we had gone and parked up my car. I started trying to quote-unquote grind up this weed, and I didn't have a grinder that I had brought with me, but I figured I probably didn't need one because just touching the nug made it disintegrate. So I start, you know, kind of hand grinding, which really just came down to kind of squeezing the nugs very lightly between my fingers, and they would just kind of turn into shake, you know? I mean, even the stems really weren't feeling very firm anymore. They were barely holding on. Honestly, those stems were probably hollow at this point. But either way, we roll up a blunt of this garbage weed, and it was really weird because we couldn't get a nug plug in there, you know? Normally when you're rolling a blunt or you're rolling a J, you're going to want some sort of bigger nug at the end of it so you're not getting a bunch of Scooby snacks, right? That was not really possible with this weed. There was no nug that we could create. So we just kind of rolled it extra tight and said, fuck it, you know, let's just go for it. So we roll up this blunt. We put the middest of the mid. No, not even mids. The absolute bottom tier Reggie. Like any Mexican brick would have smoked harder than this. And we spark it up. Oh my God, bro. It was like I lit a firecracker, dude. I thought we were about to blow up in this car. At first, I didn't understand what was happening because I sparked it. And when I inhaled for the first decent hit, I just got this snap. Literally, the end of the blunt was sparkling, dude. It was like a firecracker. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, bro, like, what is going on, dude? This is awful. And I take a couple more hits and it's crackling. It's like we're sitting by the fire, you know, and I pass it over to Mary. She takes a couple hits and this shit is brutal, dude. Brutal. I don't know if you guys have ever smoked out of something very questionable, like for example, paper, you know what I'm saying? But I'm telling you right now, it tasted like that, you know? You know how that smells, that chemical smell when you're burning a paper that you shouldn't be burning? That's how this weed tasted. It was utterly, I was surprised that it even had a taste left after sitting that long wherever it was sitting and however it was sitting. I don't know, dude. Like, realistically, for it to have been even lightable, I mean, it must have been at least in a dimly lit area, which I guess the garage would constitute that, but like, oh my God, dude. So we're taking a couple hits of this blunt, and it is brutal, dude. I mean, it is snap, crackle, popping every time we hit it, but her and I are some fiends, so we're going for it. We're going for the gold, right? So we smoked this entire blunt. We finish it. We put it out a little earlier than normal because the roach was kind of scary. It was sparkling the whole way down. I didn't really want to explode, you know, like blow my finger off. So we put it out fairly early, smoked this blunt. I don't know if it was a placebo effect, like maybe it was just the act of inhaling, but I felt a little something. Yeah, I felt a little something. I wasn't stoned by any means, okay? I mean, I swear to God, I could have done my ABCs backwards. I could have sat down and taken the bar exam, you know, any of that. But I felt a little bit of something, and that was enough to have me motivated. I was like, all right, well, we're in business. This marijuana is sellable. So I'm talking to her and I'm like, yo, listen, like, why don't we just sell this? You know what I'm saying? And she's like, yeah, like, I guess I could sell it. And I realized very quickly that she wants to sell it herself. And I'm like, oh yeah, wait, this is her. I kind of, you know, I snap back to reality. I'm like, oh yeah, wait, this is her quarter pound. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, you know, this girl probably is not going to be serving. Like, she does not know people like that, I don't think. I don't know, maybe she was getting around, but as far as I was aware, I was probably better poised for that gig, you know? So I'm pitching it to her. I'm sitting here. It's like I'm in a board meeting with her, dude. I'm sitting here and I'm like, listen, check the stats. I got hella people on Snapchat. All right, just cut me in. We'll get rid of this quick, make some money. You know what I'm saying? And she's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, what if she brings up, she's like, what if my dad's pissed? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, bro, your dad doesn't even know that this weed was there. Look at the state of it. So we had discussed after a little while and we came to the agreement that we would split the money on all the serves that I got her. Now, the next problem we ran into was the fact that you can't really take pictures and post this stuff. This isn't really Snapchat-worthy weed, so instead, we took the angle of just doing a black screen, putting some prices up, and throwing it on the story. These were the days, bro. Back when you could have all your homies in high school added and just check their stories and see who's serving what. Nowadays, all the guys who continue doing that are in jail. So I post up on my story, she posts up on hers, and I got a couple people that hit me up, but none of them are really willing to go without a picture. So, you know, I tried to do what I could, maybe turn the flash on a little bit, but there was no saving this. The flash actually made it worse. You didn't want to see very much of the bag, you know? So I was trying to take these intentionally not very great pictures, and it wasn't really working. I was getting left unopened pretty often here. So we're sitting there together for a couple hours, and the plan of us going to re-up at Cody's house had gone completely out the window. At this point, we were about the paper, you know? So we're sitting there. We're trying to figure out what to do with this weed. And Mary actually ends up getting us the first serve. She's like, yo, I got a girl we can pull up on. Let's go over there, right? So she gives me the address. We whip on over there. Now, listen. We didn't have a scale on us. We didn't have bags. We didn't have anything necessary. But this was back in the day where everyone was cool with eyeballing, right? Realistically, as long as you mutually agreed, you could just eyeball the bag, throw it in some paper or a receipt, and there you go. You're set for the day. We weren't spending money on extra supplies to serve. No, no, no. If I had extra money, that's either going to a McChicken or Xanax, my boy. So we drive over to this chick's house, and obviously, once we get there, you could have probably assumed this was coming. She was no longer interested in the weed after seeing it. It seemed like Mary and this girl were pretty good friends, so I was kind of confused as to why Mary would try to sell this to her. But, I mean, to each their own. That's their business, not mine. So we skedaddled out of there pretty quickly. We actually offered to stop and smoke with her, and she just said no after seeing the weed. She was like, no, I'll smoke on my own. So we dipped out of there. We were like, well, this is not working. And we kind of gave up after that. We were like, yo, fuck it. Let's just go get faded. So we just forgot about the QP. We left it in my whip, drove over to Cody's house, bought some real weed, got high on that, and I just gave the QP. She just took it home. I was like, yeah, just take it, you know? I just gave it to her, and off she went, you know? She went back home. I don't know what ever happened with that quarter pound, the entire of it. I mean, it might still be in that garage right now for all I know. I really don't know. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, y'all. Deuces.